My car is still snowbound, so
Ah,
Okay. I put tarps on mine.
yeah, they really just cleared out. I live in a court, and they just really cleared it out really well today because before you couldn't see the ground, you couldn't see anything. Now, they've cleared a lot of that snow out. It's so hard. It's hard as a rock.
it
Yeah, yeah.
is. It is. Yeah, I
Well,
saw a video where some kids like made an igloo, but I see how they did it
Yeah,
now
I saw that.
because it is very it's like blocks like that,
It
oh, they
is.
hard
made they
block.
made an igloo?
Uh-huh, they
Yes, they did.
did.
Yeah, it was an
Oh,
igloo.
So you
wow.
must, I think I saw it on the news. You
It
saw the
was on,
same
yeah,
thing.
it was
Yeah.
on the news.
Mhm. Yep.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Uh-huh, it is.
And cold.
Yeah, yeah,
Yes.
very cold, I'm sure.
Hmm.
Also, I put tarps over my car. I learned that years ago. And
Okay.
and
Yeah.
and that way, if it freezes on top, all you have to do is pull the
The
tarp
top
back,
part. Yeah.
and I haven't taken it off yet, but um, it's always easier than just trying. Now, if it's just snow, it's not so bad because it'll brush off. But if
Right.
it's that ice, it freezes it, and then it's hard to get off.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah. There are a couple of people in my community that have tarps on their cars.
Yeah, yeah.
This is the good time to have uh, a garage. I always see my daughter, she talks about, oh, I didn't know. I said, well, I don't have a garage like some people, because she has they have a two-car garage.
Right,
And I
right,
always
right,
tease
right.
her.
Oh my goodness. I won't tell you then that I have a garage.
Oh, okay, all right.
Okay, I'm not gonna be mad with I'm not gonna be mad.
No, we'll accept that, all
But I'm
right.
a little jealous though.
Uh-oh.
Hello.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, I wonder where folks are this evening. We'll see
Probably
how many
hunkered down.
come on.
Yeah, being lazy like me. I feel lazy. Oh,
Lazy, lazy.
lazy,
Yeah.
lazy.
All right. Well, we'll wait a few minutes and see who comes on, but
Okay.
then we'll go ahead.
All right.
Hello, ladies.
Oh,
Hi,
there's Cynthia.
Cynthia.
Right.
Ooh,
How
how
are you?
are you all?
Good, good, good. Good, good, good.
Good.
We're fine. We're just gonna get, I guess, come out of this being fatter.
Oh my goodness.
I don't need
Mm,
that.
But I have been eating salads now. I have been eating salads.
Oh,
I
that's
had salad
mm.
today too.
But I
all
guess it's
right.
what's in the salad, right? What you put
But
on
I
Uh-oh.
also but I
Right.
also had I also had a waffle with some turkey gravy. So
Oh,
Oh,
oh
yeah.
wow.
That sounds good.
I like homemade waffles, and I still had some
Oh, that's
turkey. When I make a turkey at Thanksgiving,
Yeah.
I cut it up in pieces and freeze it because it's
Yeah.
just me. So I
Mm-hmm.
take some of that and make some gravy and put it over waffles, and it's good.
Oh, that
Oh
sounds
wow.
I did
delicious.
have that today, and then some soup, and a salad
yeah, that
Yeah.
sounds real
Yeah.
good.
and
Yeah.
snacks. And
Yeah. Snack.
all right, let me stop. Let me stop.
Mm.
All right.
Whew,
All
goodness.
right. Well, we're going to begin.
Mm.
And I hope some others come on, but if not, we'll dig in for us. It's okay.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
However many we are, we're
That's
good.
right.
Yeah.
And it is. I think the recording is going. Did you all hear it?
Uh-huh. I
Yeah,
saw it.
it said
Okay.
it. Yeah, it
Okay.
did
Yes.
say that.
Good,
Mm.
good, good. So we're continuing, of course, on our women from the Bible, these extraordinary women, the bold and beautiful, and all the great and wonderful things. Many things to take notes on tonight. We're going to have a lot of folks with a lot of references. So it's up to you if you want to take those references for further look, or else you can always Google them actually and find where they're at too. But I'm a note taker myself, so
Yeah.
I'll have
So,
that in there. So let me see. Let's look at some facts and see if I can get them here and read them. Let's talk about some things. Do any of you know who the businesswoman was that helped start the church in Europe?
Mm.
How about if I told you she sold purple cloth?
Oh,
Her name is Lydia.
yes. I
And
couldn't
she's
figure
written
that
about
for a
in
second.
Acts, and she was the first recorded European convert also. Her name was Lydia. How about a woman who named her son Pain? Do you have any idea who that was? Okay, that was Jabez's mother, named him based on her difficult childbirth experience. And Jabez means pain. You may have heard of the prayer of Jabez, but his mother had great difficulty in his birth, and so that's why she named him Jabez Pain. There was the first female apostle. Do you have any idea who that was? Her name was Junia. She's written about in Romans 16:7. She's called Outstanding Among the Apostles by Paul. And some translations change her name to a masculine form because at that point in time they weren't promoting the women at it, but it actually was a woman that had that role. Okay, so those are some of the facts out there. Um, and let me review some that we may have mentioned before. Who was Ruth's mother-in-law? Remember, we studied Orpah, who was Ruth's sister, and Ruth went with her mother-in-law. Orpah went back to
Naomi?
Naomi?
Naomi.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Do you know what woman found Moses floating in the Nile River? It was Pharaoh's daughter. Pharaoh's daughter found him. You're muted, Glenda.
I knew that, but I was trying to think of is there a name? I was trying to think like, what's their name?
I don't know if her name
So
is.
I was thinking about a name and not, I knew
Yeah,
it was his daughter,
we
but
always refer to her as Pharaoh's
Pharaoh's
daughter.
daughter.
She may have been named further on in things about Moses, but in the very beginning, I know she's just referred to as Pharaoh's daughter. How about who was Hannah's son that she dedicated to the Lord? We talked about uh, this woman and said that she was a mother of this person. Who was she the mother of? Do you remember when we talked about Hannah? She's the mother of Samuel.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was muted again. I was saying Samuel.
Oh, okay. Well, you need to keep yourself unmuted for right now. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Okay. Does anybody know what the name was of Jacob's daughter? Jacob had a daughter, and her name was Dinah.
Ah,
Dinah. Anybody know who the wife was of the Old Testament prophet Hosea? Her name was Gomer.
yes.
Gomer, Gomer, Gomer. Okay, so those are some of the things and some of the names that sometimes they pop up. Sometimes we recognize them, sometimes we don't. Once we hear them, we think, oh, I've heard that name, but we haven't
Mhm.
really made those associations. But those many women in the scriptures. And tonight we're going to talk a little bit about the cultural context of the time. Um, they uh, didn't they often didn't portray uh, women as equals or subordinates to men. Okay, um, in creation in Genesis, Adam was created, then Eve from his side. But throughout the culture, then they weren't considered as quote equals. Women faced a lot of restrictions. They were confined to their domestic sphere for the most part, although there are some that we, like Lydia, for instance, who became known in the fabrics and things like that. She had a business, and other women worked in selling the grains and things like that. But most of all, they had the domestic duties. And they had limited rights in legal matters. We're going to talk a little bit more about that in one of our women tonight. They were not allowed to testify in court, for instance. If there was a court issue, women weren't allowed to testify. And so that's just kind of how that was. So those are some of the cultural things that were going on at the time. And of course, we know of many women in the Gospels. We have Mary, the mother of Jesus, Mary Magdalene, who was a follower. We had Elizabeth, who was the mother of John the Baptist. Anna was the elderly prophetess that was in the temple and recognized Jesus as the Messiah. There's the Samaritan woman that we read about, that was the first evangelist. We have several stories and reflections on women that we have looked at and that we're going to continue to look at. So there's just different things there. And then, of course, Jael, whom we've mentioned before, killed that Canaanite commander with a tent peg. So very different things that women throughout the scriptures have done. Also, we have to realize as we look at characteristics, they were courageous. They were obedient and trusting. They were generous and hospitable. They had a lot of wisdom and discernment. They practiced integrity. And even though they may have been imperfect, as we all are, yet they were faith-filled. And so these characteristics filled many that were out there working and mentioned in the scriptures. So now we're going to look here a little bit at some named folks tonight. The first one we're going to look at is Rebecca. And Rebecca became the wife of Jacob, and then she was the mother of Esau and Jacob. So we're going to look at a couple of videos tonight. First of all, does anybody know the story of Rebecca, how she became, I said wife of Jacob. That's not right. She was the wife of who? Anybody know?
Wait a minute.
On the screen now. Isaac. She was the wife of
Yes.
Isaac. Wife of Isaac. Okay. So how did she become his wife? Do you know?
Did I think he oh wow, I'm trying to get my thoughts together. Some they came looking for her, not looking for, but he sent a servant to
Yeah, yes,
find her to find a wife for his son.
yes, 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 yes. And he found Rebecca, but do you know how he found her? Do you remember?
Was she at a well?
She was at the well. Mm-hmm.
And he asked her about water for his animal or something like
Yeah.
that. I can't remember the whole story, but I think that's what happened.
Yes. All right. So we're going to look into that now. As it came about through camels.
Yeah.
And so we're first going to look at this first little video about the camel and making reference there. Let me see if I can get this narrowed down here. So, okay. Okay, so we're going to look at this first one. These are little short videos, but they will help you to understand what went on there. So first of all, about the camels. Here we go.
In a time long before cities were bustling and technology was thriving, there lived a respected patriarch named Abraham. By now, Abraham had aged gracefully, and the silver strands in his hair glistened as reminders of the wisdom he had gathered through the years. But there was one pressing matter he needed to address before he joined his ancestors in rest: the future of his beloved son, Isaac. Abraham, with all his heart, wished for Isaac to marry not from the Canaanite women surrounding their encampment, but from his own kin in the land he had left behind. He believed deeply in the values and traditions of his lineage. Thus began the journey. Abraham summoned his most trusted and senior servant, Eliezer, known for his loyalty and keen sense of responsibility. "Place your hand under my thigh," Abraham instructed solemnly, "and swear by the Lord, God of heaven and earth, that you will find a wife for my son Isaac from my homeland, not from the daughters of the Canaanites." Eliezer was resolute and set out with 10 camels loaded with an array of gifts that reflected both Abraham's wealth and his intentions. These camels, sturdy and trustworthy, were more than mere beasts of burden. They represented Abraham's hopes and promises entrusted to Eliezer's guidance. After days traversing the barren desert and endless dunes, the caravan reached the city of Naar, where they'd rest by a well outside the town. It was evening, just as the sun cast its golden embrace over the horizon, a time when the women of the village would come to draw water. Eliezer, wearied by the journey but steadfast in purpose, prayed humbly, "O Lord, God of my master Abraham, grant me success today, and show kindness to my master." He crafted a test to help reveal the right bride for Isaac, saying to himself, "Let the girl to whom I shall say, 'Please lower your jar that I may drink,' and who replies, 'Drink, and I'll water your camels too,' let her be the one you've chosen for Isaac." As if guided by the unseen hand of Providence, a fair young maiden named Rebekah arrived, her face lit with a gentle grace. She lowered her jar into the well, and as she drew near, Eliezer approached. "Please let me have a little water from your jar," he asked. Rebekah, with a kindly spirit and generosity of heart, offered, "Drink, my lord, and I'll draw water for your camels as well." Eliezer stood in quiet awe, watching this remarkable girl fulfill the criteria he had so earnestly prayed for. He presented the gifts meant for the chosen bride and asked about her family. Hearing she was of Abraham's kin, Eliezer bowed in worship, recognizing the guiding hand of his God in these moments of blessing and clarity.
Okay, so what do we see there? Y'all remember the story now? How it went on? But I have a couple of questions for you. Rebecca went to feed these camels. Do you remember how many camels they said were in the story?
10.
10?
10
Yeah.
camels. Okay. Now, what camels in that day, well, it's still today, to feed a camel, each camel could hold up to, let's see, 30 or 40 gallons of water. Okay.
That's a lot of water.
30 to 40 gallons of water.
So that was a big deal back then.
It certainly was. And so if they had to get, and she said, "I will water your camels." Now he had set out this thing before the Lord. He said, "I'm supposed to go get this wife for Isaac. Let her be the one that comes and not only says she'll give me a drink, but will feed my camels, water my camels."
That's pretty mind-blowing.
It is. And then the fact that there were 10 camels, each one took about 30 gallons, because that's why they could go long distances in the desert without having to water the camels, because they held so much. And then also, how did she get them then? How did she get 20 to 30 gallons for each camel? So if she did that for 10, it would be somewhere between 2 and 300 gallons of water she needed to fill up these camels.
So how long did that take?
Yeah, that's how long do you think that would take? How did she get it?
Buckets.
Bucket.
Yeah.
Yes. She went with a jar to collect water. That's where she
Wow.
got water for him. And this was something that the women would do. They would go to the well to get water for their family, to feed any of their animals, if they were raising goats or if they had camels of their own or whatever. The women would go to the well and get water. Now, she was a young girl again, and she carried this water. A lot of times you will see pictures of them, carrying the water pots on their heads or carrying it on their shoulders. But realizing that how much did they have in one of those barrels? Probably a couple gallons. But how many times did she have to go dip in that well? And then the wells were the kind this one was the kind where they would lower it in a rope and pull up the water. So that was quite a chore she had to do
Mhm.
to feed or to water all those camels. So it probably took her quite an amount of time to do all that. Now, she may have gotten some of her sisters because they had all gone to the well together. She
Mhm.
may have gotten them to help, but nonetheless, it was quite a task.
So the women had to be physically strong.
Exactly. They were physically strong and they had to do this and carry it was part of their natural chores. Like if they wanted drinking water, water to do their dishes, waters for bathing, all of it had to come out of this well. And so they had to carry all this water back to their place of living and use it for the various things. So they were used to doing it, but doing it for your own family took a lot of time and strength in a day's time, let alone to now offer to do it for someone who was just visiting. So it's not only showing like the hospitality, but also showing the fact that she was willing, to give of herself. Um, it took a lot, took a
Mhm.
lot. So it was also practice in that day to remember they wives and husbands didn't date, they didn't find each other that way. It was customary for the parents to find a wife for the sons or for their daughters to become wives for somebody else's sons, and they would choose them and select them. And again, they were probably fairly young. Well, let's watch this next little video here. It's basically the same story but a little different perspective here.
Abraham was old and wanted a wife for his son Isaac. He sent his servant to find a wife from his homeland. The servant prayed, Lord, show me the right woman. Then
Right.
Rebekah came with a jar on her shoulder. She offered water to him and to his camels. The servant gave her jewelry and asked about her family. Her family welcomed him and agreed to the marriage. Then Rebekah traveled to meet Isaac. Isaac saw her from afar and went to meet her. He loved her, and she became his wife.
Okay. So there you see where
Abraham was old.
the father had sent this servant to go get someone as a wife for his son. Did you pick up anything else from that one? He took gifts, right? He took a lot of gifts, jewelry and fine things. But at the time she offered to give the water, she didn't know what he was looking for. And then in this one that we just saw, we saw where her parents were very anxious. I mean, her family was very anxious to oblige and said, oh, yeah, she can go. They didn't ask her. They didn't ask her if she wanted to or if she, how she felt about it. It was all their decision. However, she followed him. If she had refused, then that servant would be relieved of all his responsibilities because he would have been thought to have failed. But Glenda, you're muted again.
I'm sorry, I was going to ask, so what would have happened if she
If she
she
refused,
yeah.
that's a good question too, because if she refused, then it's up to the family who she marries. she may have said, I don't want to, or I can't go, but she may have been forced to go anyway, or have been put out of the family. That's just kind of the way it was. And so the key to the servant is he was a man of God, and he prayed and he sought God. He said, let me know which one by this response. And so when she came, he felt that, okay, that's the one God sent. That's it. And then it turned out to be. And then when it went on, um, she, it says that the minute he saw her, he loved her. And that was not always the case when these people married back then. They didn't always love each other, but they had to be together because they were arranged marriages. But fortunately for them, they did love each other. And so they grew, and that was a good thing for them. So she agreed to go, and went and became his wife. So I have one more little video I want us to watch concerning Rebecca, because then you all may know the story of what happened later with her son.
Abraham sent his servant on a sacred mission to find a wife for Isaac. At a well, the servant prayed for a sign, and Rebecca appeared, offering water just as he had asked God. Seeing this as God's answer, the servant gave her gifts and met her family, who agreed this was the Lord's will. Rebecca chose to go, and as she approached, Isaac saw her from afar. She veiled herself in humility, and in that moment, their destiny was sealed by God's hand.
So just making the point that it was sealed by God's hand. God had been the one directing her and guiding her as well as him to the situation. Now they went on, and of course later she had the two sons, and there's the story of the one son. They were twins, but one was born first, Esau and Jacob. She was also fond of Jacob. That was the one where she let Jacob fake himself to be his brother and take the blessing and all of that. This is that same Rebecca, that same story. But yet she and Isaac loved each other. That was when Isaac was on his deathbed also. So she went on, and she became strong in everything there, raised her children, took care of the family, did everything she needed to do there. Let's see, the wedding, she was a good mother, she was a good wife. And then, she went on up until she was there as Isaac was dying, but that's when she tricked him into giving the blessing, because the blessing always went to the first son. And even though it was just moments apart because they were twins, Esau was the first son. And so that blessing that should have been Esau's went to Jacob. And then later, it comes out that the mother asked for, could Esau have some blessing? And he was also blessed, but he didn't get the first blessing. And that was always the one that was cherished, was the first blessing and the blessing of the father. So that's how that story went. Any questions, comments, things about her before we move on? To me, it's fascinating about the camels and what she had to do, how they had to do that in their life then, all that they had to do to raise a family and take care of their people. And to me, it's just amazing. Like, we sit in our house and hope the heat comes on, turn on the stove and cook our food. I might have a cat or a dog I need to water, but we don't have to water the camels. So, anybody have anything you want to share or question?
Now, I was just thinking, and this is going back to the kids, the two sons.
Uh-huh.
Um, isn't that where they split as they grew older and became two nations?
Yes. Yes. And then later on, there's a time when Jacob wants to come back to Esau, and he had two wives, and he took
Mhm.
them separate caravans because he thought his brother was going to kill him. And so if you read the whole story about Rebecca, she was one of those two wives. And then it turned out that Esau no longer felt bad because Jacob took the birthright. He wanted to mend, and they ended up becoming good, friendly brothers in the end. But
Mhm.
he went with his family, but he kept them in separate areas because he thought if one goes in and gets slaughtered, I'll at least have the other one.
Right.
You know, so there's a lot more to the story, but the most fascinating part is how she became his wife, I believe, by being an answer to someone's prayer. And do you ever think of that, ladies, that you can sometimes be an answer to someone's prayer and not even realize that's what's happening?
I think that happens a lot with us, and we don't know that it happens.
I totally agree. I think oftentimes God uses us, it may be to just say hello to someone, smile at them, give them a piece of candy, whatever, and that means so much. And we change people's lives by just being hospitable. And that's what she was. She was being hospitable and friendly. Oh, someone is coming through. We'll take care of them. Um, and I'm sure their house was already crowded, as we've talked before about how their homes were so tiny and everything. Um, Rebecca's death after Jacob's 20 years with Laban indicates that Jacob was 97 when his mother died, and Rebecca was either 120 or 134, based on the mentions later on in scriptures. So can you imagine that, ladies, living to 120 or 134, raising those families, carrying that water all those years? I
Wow.
mean, that's a long time.
Hmm.
Long, long time. So she watered the camels. She agreed to go. She left her family. She was the first wife mentioned in scriptures that loved her husband and that her husband loved her. Then she had Esau and Jacob. She also became what they call the mother of nations, the matriarch of nations, because her husband, Isaac, became the father of nations. And so she became the matriarch. Um, she slaughtered goats, prepared meat, skins for offering, all of those things. Her mother's heart was torn at times. Um, and she left quite a legacy. She was wise, decisive, and bold. So, anything else you can say about her? Her name, by the way, Rebecca, and it could some versions spell it Rebekah. Some refer to it as Rebecca, Rebecca, and it comes from a Hebrew word Rivka, Rivkah, and it actually means to tie or to bind. And of course, her life was an example of creating a tie and a bind. Um, Her name symbolizes her loyalty, devotion, and love. As we look at these names, and we often talk about the names, I think it's always interesting to see what their name means. Okay, anything else for Rebecca? Anybody?
Well,
Any
I
comment?
I so I recently read about Esau and Jacob in
Okay.
my reading, and I found my notes for that, and she was barren for 20 years.
Yes. Oh, yes, and I forgot to mention that. She was
Yeah.
barren for that first 20 years, and then she had the twins.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, that's right. She was a favorite because he
Yes,
had another wife. Right.
yes,
He was strict.
yes,
Yes.
yes, yes, yes.
That
And
must have been extremely difficult.
oh, well, and in that day, if you didn't have children, you were marked.
Hmm.
You were considered to be something wrong with you if you didn't have children.
Hmm.
And so she was another one like Sarah. They had been praying for years to have children.
Hmm.
Hmm.
And then when God blessed him, he finally blessed him with
Twins.
twins. Yeah, yeah. Yeah. So there's a lot more to it. We could probably spend 6 weeks alone on some of these women, studying everything in their lives. But she's one that when we hear about her, we hear about like the thing with Esau and Jacob, or maybe the story about her being barren, but we don't hear about what did that mean for her to water those camels. That just amazed me. That may amaze me almost as much as Goliath being the son of Orpah. These are the
Yes.
little things that God's bringing to us through this study
Mhm.
to realize the characteristics of these precious, precious women out there.
So you know that it has to be God.
Yes,
Mhm.
yes, yes, yes. So anybody else comments? It's good to see Janet joined us here tonight. Okay, well, we're going to move on then to a lady named Rizpah. Do any of you know who Rizpah is? Rizpah? Her story is in 2 Samuel chapter 3, 7 to 11. There's a few other things. She was one of Saul's concubines. And you remember in that day they had wives and they had concubines. And she was one of Saul's concubines. But the problem there is her children were later killed because of a conflict. So we're going to look at the story about what happened, and then we'll talk a little bit more in depth about Rizpah. So here's the story.
While others turned away and her sons were forgotten, one mother remained, and her unwavering love echoed all the way to heaven. Long ago, in the land of Israel, lived a woman named Rizpah. Her name isn't famous like David or Moses, and she didn't lead armies or speak prophecies, but her story is one of the most powerful examples of love, courage, and faith in the entire Old Testament. Rizpah had once been a concubine of King Saul, Israel's first king. She had two sons, Armoni and Mephibosheth, and she loved them deeply. They were her world. After Saul died, David became king, chosen by God to lead Israel. But during David's reign, something terrible struck the land, a famine that lasted 3 long years. Crops failed, fields dried up, families struggled to survive. David sought the Lord to understand why this suffering had come, and God revealed the truth. The famine was a consequence of something King Saul had done years earlier. Saul had attacked the Gibeonites, even though Israel had sworn an oath to protect them. To make things right, David asked the Gibeonites what justice they required. They didn't ask for silver, gold, or land. Instead, they demanded 7 male descendants of Saul to be put to death. David agreed, though he spared Jonathan's son Mephibosheth because of a sacred promise he had made to Jonathan. But 2 of the men chosen were Rizpah's sons. Imagine her heartbreak. Imagine soldiers taking away the boys she raised, the boys she prayed for, the boys she loved, and knowing she could do nothing to save them. The 7 men were taken to a hill in Gibeah and executed. Their bodies were left hanging, exposed to the sun, wind, and scavenging animals. This was the custom in those days, but it only increased the pain for those who loved them. Yet Rizpah did something no one expected. She went to the hill where her sons hung. She spread a rough sackcloth on a rock and made it her place of mourning, her shelter, her watchtower. And there she stayed, day after day, night after night, under the burning sun and the cold night air. She refused to let wild animals touch their bodies. She waved away birds. She guarded them with nothing but her own presence and a mother's fierce devotion. Weeks passed, then months. People walked by and whispered. Some felt pity. Some thought she had lost her mind. But still, she stayed. Her vigil lasted from the beginning of the barley harvest until the rains finally returned. likely many long, painful months. All that time, she remained on that hill, alone, grieving, faithful, determined. And though she said no speeches and issued no demands, her silent stand spoke louder than any words. When King David heard what Rizpah had done, how she had camped on that hill out of love for her sons, his heart was moved. He realized that these men had been shown no honor, no final dignity. Immediately, David ordered that the bones of Saul and Jonathan be gathered. Then he commanded that the bodies of Rizpah's sons and the others be taken down and given a proper burial in the family tomb of Kish, Saul's father. Only after this act of honor and justice did the famine come to an end. Rizpah didn't bring her sons back. She didn't gain riches, titles, or praise. She simply loved faithfully. And through her steadfast heart, she awakened the conscience of a king and reminded a nation of what justice and compassion truly look like. Her story echoes through Scripture as a testimony of quiet courage, of a mother's love that refused to be forgotten, of faithfulness that God Himself notices even when the world does not. Rizpah teaches us that God sees every act of love, especially the ones done in silence without applause. When the world overlooks us or our pain feels unseen, God still pays attention. Faithfulness, even in the hardest places, can move hearts, restore justice, and shine His light in the darkest valleys. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share for more powerful Bible stories.
All right. How interesting is that? Wow. Have you ever heard of that story of Rizpah before? Anybody have comments on it?
I've
Yeah,
heard it before, but I've forgotten it, to tell
yeah.
you the truth.
And it's amazing this, can you imagine what strength it took for her to go out there and just stay out there day and night all that time? Um, it's just amazing how she was out there and did that. Anybody else have comments or anything before we go on and look a little deeper into her?
Now, that took a lot of courage, definitely, for months to just grieve. Her grief was hard. Yeah, it was hard.
And we all know grief, and some of us know what it's like to lose children. I lost my daughter. Some of you have lost children, and it's hard. But her grief was as much out of the fact that no one showed respect to the fact that they died into their bodies, because in their life and in their traditions, it was disrespectful not to have proper burials for bodies. And that's what she was after. She wanted them to recognize that they did not treat the families correctly by not allowing them to have the proper burials for their loved ones. And so that's what she was seeking. But can you imagine out there her tears of grief, her battling the crows and the wolves, the animals that may have come to try to get those, and they were on crosses. That's how they were putting people to death then. And so that's what, she sat there by that. Can you imagine also even the fact of a dead body and the stench, and then all these critters coming? I mean, it was not just a little thing out there. And then people would maybe come by on the roadway, and eventually it says David heard. So that people started talking. This woman, she's out there. She's crazy. She's staying out there, and the word got back to David that even though he had given permission for them to take the 7 lives because of a conflict that had taken place, he did not mean for them to not be treated decently when it happened. And so then he corrected it.
That was going to be my question. I was going to ask you, was it common for them to just leave bodies hanging, or did they
No,
eventually take them down?
they usually take them down and bury them within a day, was their practice. Now, Rizpah, her name, I thought this was interesting. It's commonly interpreted as hot stone or coal, uh, indicating warmth and emotional intensity. Or sometimes it's referred to as a spark or a shining one, glowing stone. And so that's what her name means. And actually, that's what kind of she was out there. But it's a story of her loyalty, of her grief, and then of divine justice that finally did come and take place. So that's how she was out there. And then even if we're suffering in grief today, there's many that have had recent loved ones lost, and we feel hurt. We think sometimes we think nobody has had to suffer like I have, and yes, they have probably. But we all suffer differently. We all grieve differently, and we often wonder, did God forget about me? But he hasn't, and he grieves when we grieve. He grieves for us. But she became also, like I say, the victim of possible national gossip out there about that woman out there on that mound. She watched helplessly for her two sons that hang there. And why did they get hung? Because of the sins of their father. Something their father had done, they were killed. But she just held her head high and reacted with dignity and strength out there. Um, she just held strong. You read about that in 2 Samuel chapter 3, where it tells this story. So, she loved her sons. She had been praying too, as it indicated there in the video. She had been praying for sons, for children. She had her children. She raised her children, and now they were taken from her. So there was a famine. Also, did you catch that part? There was a famine in the land, and that's when all this took place. The famine didn't end until they gave justice to what they had done. That's when the famine ended. And David, it said that he prayed and asked God, what is the reason for the famine? And then God revealed it to him that it's because Saul and his bloodthirsty killing of the Gideonites, because of what Saul had done. So, you know, we can read these stories in depth, but realizing that sometimes because of what someone else has done, we suffer or our families suffer. And maybe there's nothing we can do to change the suffering, but there is a way that we can see that justice does occur for or respect for those loved ones that we had. So that was her tragedy. And she stayed basically there. She was there at, basically, you could say, at the foot of the cross of her children. She stayed at the foot of the crosses of her children through those, keep the beasts of the field away, and their bodies slowly decayed, I'm sure. They smelled, seemed like nobody else cared. But then when David heard, he went back. So what do you think we can learn from her story?
Perseverance is one, that's for sure.
Yeah.
And tremendous love, just
Mhm.
caring and loving, regardless of what.
Yeah.
Because she didn't lash out at anybody, she just stayed there.
Right, right, right. She just held the respect for her sons.
Hmm.
And she didn't lash out, she didn't shout blame on anybody. She didn't even get mad at those people who walked by and made fun of her. And I'm sure they did. She just continued in her persistence. we get caught up in politics of things today. People do things that we think are wrong. And is justice ever done? We just need to continue to believe and trust in our God in all of these things and realize that we just need to take our stand of respect and honor for whoever or whatever, and just allow God to move in his time to make anything right about it.
That's,
Go ahead.
so I was going to say that's interesting too when you said that, because the story didn't mention anything about her relationship with God. It just talked about so you had to assume certain things, I guess.
Well, when you read the story, you'll see that it does say that she had prayed for the sons.
Okay.
And then there's reference in there that she did have a relationship with God, but it doesn't go into deep depth on it.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, and in my opinion, how I hear it is that, God had to be with her that whole time, and she had to have some kind of very strong connection to God to be able to do that and not go totally insane.
Yes, there you go. Yes. Another thing, there were other boys that were killed there, other sons of Saul. Where were their mothers? Nobody joined her. She took it all on herself. And, nobody joined her. Nobody cared enough about her or about them to join her. And, did she have a reason to feel sorry for herself? Maybe.
Yeah, I think so.
But she gave no sign of self-pity. Her concern was all for the protection of those bodies and give them a decent, honorable burial. So it wasn't a poor, pitiful me. It was for, respect for them. And she was
Yeah.
alone through a lot of it. Go ahead.
Yeah, that story kind of reminds me of Daniel and the Lion's Den, her with all those wild animals, and
Yeah, yeah.
if she ever got touched by them.
Yep.
And also speaks to how she didn't care what other people thought about what she
There
was
you go.
doing.
Yeah.
She knew in her mind that she had to do this. Her heart or her spirit was telling her to do this, and she didn't care if people thought she was crazy or whatever.
Yes.
And I'm sure I'm thinking there had to be some people that came and gave her food and water or something to help her
Bible
survive.
doesn't tell us how she sustained herself out.
Right.
So I don't know if she went and got it, or if people brought it to her. It doesn't tell us. But
And this guy was just completely supernaturally taking care of her in that case.
Yeah.
now
It's
the scripture,
wild.
the rest of Israel may have moved on with their lives, but Rizpah pleaded with God until the rains came, because it does say that in the story that she was pleading with God for the rains to come, because also when the rains came, that would calm things down there on that hill, and that would end the famine. And so she was praying for that end. And so 5 months she stood on that place. And let's see, what and it's hard to know that our children die or to see that, but then to watch their bodies decay. I mean, she just watched them to me, that would be a horrible thing to go through, is to just seeing them. But she never lost her faith, and she never left her guard. She just stayed on it and kept praying. So to me, it shows that she had a faith and a commitment there. Just to see some justice come about. She never gave up until he sent down healing rain. So we should never give up until he sends the rain to us too. So that's Our Lady Rizpah. So any other comments there? So we've talked about Rebecca and her two sons. Now we've talked about Rizpah and her two sons. Now, these are some obscure women in the Bible that we've been talking about. We're going to talk about three more here pretty quickly. The next one we're going to talk about is Euodia. I'm not sure how to say that right. And Synthyche. I got my tangle tangled on those. But they're in Philippians 4, and there's just 2 verses about them. So I'm going to do a little video to see who are these women.
Hello everyone, and welcome back to our channel, where we dive deep into the fascinating history of early Christianity. Today we're exploring a unique story from Paul's letter to the Philippians, the story of Euodia and Synthyche. These 2 women were not only prominent figures in their church, but also a testament to the challenges and importance of unity within the early Christian communities. Let's get into it. In the bustling city of Philippi, a major hub in Macedonia, 2 women, Euodia and Synthyche, played pivotal roles in their Christian community. Their mention by name in Paul's letters is quite rare and indicates their significant influence and leadership. Paul's plea for them to be of the same mind in the Lord underscores a crucial aspect of church life: unity. As leaders, the disagreement between Euodia and Synthyche was not a mere personal conflict. It had implications for the entire community's harmony and effectiveness in spreading the gospel. Imagine the scene: 2 influential leaders at odds, the community looking on and the potential for division. This is where Paul steps in, not only to mediate but to emphasize the gospel's work over personal disagreements. Alongside them, we hear of Clement and other co-workers, suggesting a network of early Christians deeply engaged in supporting each other. Paul's mention of the Book of Life for these women highlights their devout faith and righteous standing before God. To understand the full impact, we spoke with a scholar who provided insights into the gender dynamics and leadership roles of women like Euodia and Synthyche in early Christian communities. Seeing women in these roles challenges some of our contemporary and later views on women in the church, showing a more inclusive early Christian community. The story of Euodia and Synthyche is more than a historical footnote. It's a lesson in leadership, conflict resolution, and the enduring need for unity in communities. Their legacy teaches us that even in disagreement, the greater mission of peace and evangelism must prevail. Thank you for watching. If you found this exploration enlightening, please like, subscribe, and share this video.
Okay, so 2 women that were in the church.
Welcome back to our channel.
Whoops. Okay. Euodia and Synthyche. Have you ever heard of these women before?
Yeah, I remember reading when I was reading through the Bible, yeah.
Yes. And that's the way with me. I've read through it before, but I never stopped to think about it as to who they were, because there's just that little bit in there. But when we realize, first of all, Euodia means sweet fragrance or prosperous journey. And however you say that, Synthyche means with fate or fortune. So they're talked about in this New Testament. They were female members in the church in Philippi. That's where they were. And they had a disagreement. Does that ever happen in the church? 2 women have a disagreement, whether they're in church or out of church.
Yeah.
No, I've never heard of that. Never. No.
Yeah. And so they created, not only then did they have a disagreement, they brought other people into it. It was causing all this disunity in the church. And so they needed.
Yeah, that's extremely common these days too.
Yes, they needed to come to an agreement in the Lord. But disagreements happen, but how do we handle them? That's what makes a difference. And in this, Paul, in several of his letters to Philippi, makes reference to disagreements and the need for unity, and actually referring to what happened with these 2 women, even though he may not necessarily mention it by name. that when you get in and study it, you realize that he's making reference to what havoc these two women caused by having this disagreement. So he at one point says that he asked them to be of the same mind in the Lord. And I urge you also, true companion, help these women who labored with me in the gospel, with Clement also, and the rest of my fellow workers, whose names are in the book of life. In other words, these two women were working with me. I, Paul, was going to teaching. They helped others that were coming through. Let's help them now get back on track, is basically what he's saying. Let these two women come together. He says, I implore you, be of the same mind in the Lord. So that's what he was encouraging them to be. And then making reference to the fact that they worked together in the past. So everything was okay at one time, but then some one thing happened that caused them to disagree with one another. So he refers to them as Christians, and that their names are written in the book of life. So that, what does that mean? That means that they have accepted Christ. All right. But they still had arguments and disagreements. Do we still have arguments and disagreements even though we believe in the same Christ and have the same Savior? Yes, we do. Yes, we do. But do we stop and realize that it can affect the rest of the church? It can affect the rest of the church. And so sometimes it seems like, oh, they're the worst. They just can't get on board with me, da 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 da. And then they're saying, oh, they're the worst. They just can't get on board with me. So you have two of them disagreeing. And sometimes it's over one little thing as to maybe, I think the carpet should be blue. No, I think it should be red. I mean, it doesn't have to be some big, major theological thing that starts an argument between women in the church or out of the church. It doesn't have to be something huge. It doesn't tell us, I don't think, what they disagreed on. So we don't know. But then one will say, well, they try to prove themselves right. Well, the blue carpet will go better with that picture over there. And the red carpet will go better with that picture over there. I mean, they try to justify themselves and go on, try to prove that I'm right, they're wrong. I'm right, they're wrong. Can't they see that? Can't they see that they're wrong? And then they're saying that about each other. And then they say, hey, why don't you come over here and stand with me and help me tell her that the blue is what it really needs, not the red. Come on, I know you agree with me. So they start pulling in other people along the way. And in fact, like I say, the entire church. And sometimes it's hard to fix a problem when you're part of the problem, And so that's where these two women were. But when Paul found out and he reached out to them and he says, but one thing about Paul and the way he dealt with them, and it's the way we should deal in any situation. He started out with something positive, and then he mentions the problem, and then he closes with some sort of encouragement to get it better and fix it. So he also tells us that he appreciates them, and that we sometimes need to have unity through humility. Sometimes we need to realize it's not worth a fight over, or it's not worth disrupting the church over. Let's just settle this. Let's come together in some sort of unity. Philippians 1:27 says, only let your conduct be worthy of the gospel of Christ, so that whether I come and see you or am absent, I may hear of your affairs, that you stand fast in one spirit, with one mind, striving together for the faith of the gospel. And so Paul wrote that to them, telling them they needed to be together in one mind, standing for the gospel. And then in Philippians 2:2, he talks about being like-minded, being of one accord, of one mind. And then in verse 3, he says, esteem others better than themselves. So, think about one another, come together and find some way to come together in unity. And then remember that our main focus is the Christ, telling people about the Christ. If this argument is going to interfere with that, then you need to drop the argument and find yourselves, let yourselves come together in unity. And then another place he tells us, be anxious for nothing, but in everything by prayer and supplication with thanksgiving, let your requests be made known to God. And the peace of God that passeth understanding will guard your heart and minds through Christ Jesus. So these are all Paul's response to this type of activity that they're having. So they need to have that peace. Sometimes, it's hard to humble ourselves and to either say that I'm wrong or humble ourselves enough to say, okay, it's not worth fighting over. That's just not always the easiest route we can take. So anyway, these two women, just those two verses about their argument, but then Paul's responses keep popping up because he's telling us we shouldn't let those little things. And these two women are named. Their name is given to us so that it shows us, don't do as these two women did. Don't argue. Come together in unity and agreement. So these two got their names. So what do you think about these two ladies and their story?
I think it's a good example, but I'm glad that that whatever they were fighting about was not laid out for us. So because
Right.
that would really cause I think a division, a problem.
Exactly.
Say this, well, the Bible said this and said that. So, but it just let you know that there should not be that schism in leadership.
Yes. 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 Anything else, anybody? Okay, and these, like I say, only those two verses where they're named. They're two of the obscure women in the Bible. Now, we first talked about the woman of Abel last week when we talked about how the woman took a stand and went to the leader and got them to stop their battle and interruption. And then we talked about Rizpah, who's another one that we don't dwell on a lot and think about. She was a little bit obscure in there, but yet we have things we can learn from her. And now these two, Euodia and Synthyche, we need to learn from them as well. So any other comments there before we move on?
So maybe that's also to let us know that it's not important. Those little things are not those little things.
Mm-hmm. They're there for a reason and for us to learn from, but don't make them big things. Yeah, good point. Now we're going to move to another one. Her name is Jehosheba, and she's written about in 2 Kings 11. Does anybody know who she is?
Then was she a maid? Was she a nursemaid or was she, or maybe she was someone's mother or queen or something. I don't remember. I know the name is familiar to me.
Okay.
Focus.
Well, first of all, her name Jehosheba is Hebrew origin, and it means, the Yeho part means Yahweh, and then the Sheba part means oath. So it means Yahweh is an oath, is what her name means. Okay. And so we're going to see here how she saw something and then she found a way to save the life of an innocent little baby. So it's not what you were thinking of, but you'll see here. So let's watch her little video and then we'll talk about it.
In the rich tapestry of biblical history, certain figures shine brightly for their remarkable acts of courage and righteousness. Jehosheba, a lesser-known character in the Bible, emerges as a princess who risked everything to save a king, her infant nephew. Her story, found in the second book of Kings and the second book of Chronicles, is a testament to the enduring power of faith, love, and selflessness. Jehosheba's tale is set during a tumultuous period in the history of ancient Israel. She was the daughter of King Jehoram and Queen Athaliah, two individuals whose reign was marked by a departure from faithful worship and a descent into corruption. After the death of her father, Jehosheba found herself caught in the midst of a political and spiritual crisis. When Jehoram passed away, his son Ahaziah ascended to the throne. However, Ahaziah's reign was short-lived, as he followed in his parents' footsteps, practicing evil in the eyes of the Lord. During his rule, he aligned himself with the wicked king Ahab of Israel, further alienating the kingdom of Judah from its spiritual roots. It was a dark period in the history of Judah, one that would take a dramatic turn with the intervention of Jehosheba. The turning point in her story occurs when Ahaziah's reign is cut short. He was fatally wounded in a military campaign against the northern kingdom of Israel. With the death of the king, Queen Mother Athaliah seized the throne. Her thirst for power and her idolatrous practices threatened the spiritual heritage of Judah. Fearing for her own life and the future of the kingdom, Queen Athaliah initiated a purge of the royal family to secure her reign. In a shocking act of ruthlessness, Athaliah ordered the murder of all potential heirs to the throne, which included her own grandchildren. As the infants were systematically eliminated, the lineage of King David was at risk of being extinguished. Amid this bloodshed, Princess Jehosheba, Ahaziah's sister, stood as a beacon of hope and courage. She had married Jehoiada, a high priest in the temple of the Lord. Jehosheba's marriage to Jehoiada positioned her to wield influence and to act covertly to preserve the royal line of Judah. Jehosheba's pivotal moment of heroism came when her son, who was also Athaliah's grandson, was among the infants slated for execution. In a daring and selfless act, Jehosheba rescued her infant nephew Joash from the clutches of Queen Athaliah's murderous decree. She hid Joash in the temple of the Lord for 6 years, under the protection of Jehoiada and the sanctuary's sacred precincts. During those years, the child was raised in secret, protected from the threat of Athaliah's rule. Jehosheba's actions ensured the preservation of the royal line of David, a line from which the Messiah, Jesus Christ, would later descend. Jehosheba's bravery and selflessness were finally rewarded when the high priest Jehoiada orchestrated a coup against Queen Athaliah's tyrannical rule. With the support of the Levites and the priests, Jehoiada crowned the young Joash as the rightful king of Judah. Queen Athaliah was executed, bringing an end to her wicked reign. The restoration of King Joash marked a revival of the faithful worship of the Lord in Judah. The desecrated temple was repaired, and the people renewed their covenant with God. Joash's rule was marked by spiritual renewal and reforms, and the royal line of David was secured for future generations. Jehosheba's courageous act of saving Joash from certain death was a pivotal moment in the history of Judah. Her faith, love, and selflessness ensured the preservation of the Davidic line and the continuation of God's redemptive plan. Her story serves as a reminder that even in the darkest of times, the faithful actions of one individual can lead to the salvation of many. Jehosheba's legacy endures as a testament to the enduring power of faith, courage, and selflessness. She was not only a princess by birth, but a true hero by action, a woman whose bravery ensured the continuation of God's covenant with his people. Her story inspires us to take courageous actions in the face of adversity, to protect and preserve the heritage of faith, and to trust in God's providence as we navigate the challenges of life.
Okay. So we hear different times in history how the enemy tries to take out the line of
In the rich
Christ.
tapestry of
But this is another situation where that took place. So Jehosheba was the one who saw what was going on. She rescued her nephew, hid him in the temple for 6 years, and then brought him out, and he became the king that saved the line that led to the Christ, the lineage of David. So, what do you think about this one? What can we learn here?
I said another example of bravery,
Yes.
because it took a lot to do that, to take the child and hide him like that. And she had to have, um, which meant that she was probably highly respected, even though you can be a queen or a princess, it doesn't necessarily mean that you're respected, but she had to be highly respected and liked because, of course, the servants would know.
Yes.
Some of them would know what she did, but nobody reported her or said anything. The story is a good story.
Yeah.
So
Anybody?
I'm a little confused. So she had a son too, right? Well, because they mentioned, right, that she had a son
She had a son. This was not her son that she saved, though. It was her nephew.
only. She
Yeah.
didn't save her own son, or well, we're
Well,
not sure.
it really doesn't say.
Yeah.
So I don't know. But the thing was, they were destroying all those that were from that
Yes.
line, and so the nephew was in that line.
Hmm.
And then there was one place where it refers to the nephew, and then Athaliah's son, which was the evil queen. It was her
Yes.
own son, and he was spared because she was going to kill her own son.
Right.
Yeah, and so the way that reads there, I'm not sure if it was Athaliah's son they were referring to, or Jehosheba, her own, so that she had her own son. But if it was her own son, it doesn't tell us what happened to him. It only refers to this one who was the nephew. And then it was her nephew, and it was the evil queen's son. I think one of the big things here is God places us where we need to be.
Yes.
And he put her there when he needed someone there to do that. And we can accomplish what we need to do because he put us there to do it. So our problem is, do we step into the action and do what he's called us to do? And it says that she was strong in her beliefs and in the temple and all like that too. And it says she was married to one of the priests in the temple. And she was the daughter of King Jehoram herself. So anything else there? Any other comments on that one? But she hid him and a nurse. It says she hid him and his nurse in a bedchamber there. Raised him for 6 years. And then when he was 7 years old and the queen was eliminated, they brought him out and they anointed him king at 7 years old. And then he grew up and did a lot of things that were good, and they restored the line there. He was instructed, he was raised there in the temple, so he was instructed by the priests and things as he was growing up, and her. I'm sure she had spiritual influence on him too. Okay, anything else on her? God doesn't expect you to do it all on your own. He'll put you there and give you what you need to do it. Sometimes people just show up at the right time and do the right thing. Are you one of the people to do the right thing? Or do they show up for you sometimes too? You know?
Yeah, I think both.
Yes, yes. Okay. Here, I just came across a note that I have that there's no record of Jehosheba having any children of her own. So we don't, yeah. Okay.
Okay.
I looked at that up. Okay. But she then raised him as though he were her own. I mean, she took him.
I guess that's why I thought of thinking about a nurse. She was a nursemaid or something like that. I knew there was some kind of relationship with the kid. I couldn't put it together in my head.
That him and a nurse, and protected them for 6 years, but she was there also.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sure, she came to know and love him and take care of him and give him spiritual guidance and all that. We just need to ask God how we can be used to make a difference. What is our place? How can we help? Okay. What's our time? I've got one more. I think we have just enough time to do it. Are we good? Everybody ready for one more?
Yes.
Okay. This is Zelophehad's daughters. He had 5 daughters. And so let's look at this one quickly and then we'll talk about it.
Raising Cane's, we focus on making the most
That's
chicken finger
not
meals,
what-
getting them right every time.
Okay, that's not it.
My partner and I had challenges
come on.
starting a family before we came to Kaiser Permanente, but now we have a beautiful son.
and I
It was a
can't get out of
complex
this other
pregnancy,
thing.
but our care team was with us every step of the way. I love Kaiser Permanente.
Skip. Okay, there we go. Sorry.
Came known not just for their courage, but for their unwavering faith and trust in God. Kindly let us know in the comments section how this story has inspired you and what other Bible stories would you like to see animated. Thank you for watching.
Yeah.
Please subscribe.
I think we need to watch it again. What do you think? Let's go back here and we'll watch it.
Once in the camp of Israel, there lived a man named Zelophehad. He belonged to the tribe of Manasseh, one of the 12 tribes of Israel. Zelophehad had no sons, only 5 daughters: Mahlah, Noah, Hoglah, Milcah, and Tirzah. He was a good and honorable man, but one day he fell ill and died. The daughters mourned their father deeply. In those days, only sons could inherit land from their fathers, so the sisters worried about what would happen to their father's name and his land. They felt lost and unsure, but they loved their father and knew they had to do something. Mahlah, the eldest, gathered her sisters and said,
"We cannot let our father's name disappear. We have no brothers, but we are still his children. We should ask for his land."
The sisters agreed, but they were scared. In their culture, it was rare for women to speak up in matters like this. But Mahlah reminded them,
God is just, and he listens to the cries of his people. Let us trust in him.
The sisters knew it would not be easy, but they decided to take their case to Moses, the leader of Israel, and to the elders who helped govern the people. The day came when the 5 sisters stood before Moses, Eleazar the priest, and all the leaders of Israel at the tent of meeting. Their hearts pounded with fear, but their faith gave them courage. Mahlah spoke up, her voice steady.
Our father died in the wilderness, but he was not part of Korah's rebellion against the Lord. He left no sons, only us, his daughters. Why should our father's name disappear from his clan because he had no son? Give us property among our father's relatives.
The people gasped. No one had ever heard such a request before. The leaders murmured among themselves, unsure of what to do. Moses listened carefully to the sisters. He saw their sincerity and courage. He knew this was an important matter, so he decided to bring their case before God. Moses went into the tent of meeting and prayed to the Lord. He said,
"O Lord, what should we do about the daughters of Zelophehad?"
Then God spoke to Moses in a clear voice.
The daughters of Zelophehad are right. Give them property as an inheritance among their father's relatives and pass on their father's inheritance to them. And tell the people this law. If a man dies and leaves no son, then his inheritance should go to his daughter.
When Moses returned to the people, he declared the words of the Lord.
God has spoken. The daughters of Zelophehad are right. They shall receive their father's inheritance. And from now on, if a man has no son, his daughters shall inherit his property.
The people were amazed. God had listened to the voices of 5 women, and had changed the law for the whole nation of Israel. The sisters were filled with joy and gratitude. They knew that their father's name would not be forgotten, and their faith had been rewarded. But their story did not end there. Some leaders from the tribe of Manasseh, the tribe of the daughters, came forward with a concern. They spoke to Moses and said,
"If these daughters marry men from other tribes, the land that belongs to our tribe will go to other tribes. This will disrupt the inheritance of our people."
The leaders feared that the new law might create confusion in the future. Moses knew this was a serious concern. So once again, he sought the Lord's guidance. God answered Moses, saying,
"The daughters of Zelophehad may marry anyone they wish, but they must marry within their father's tribe. This way, the land will not move from one tribe to another."
Moses gathered the people and shared God's command.
The daughters can marry whom they choose, but they must marry within the tribe of Manasseh.
The daughters listened carefully. They understood that God's wisdom was protecting the unity and fairness of Israel's inheritance. The 5 sisters honored God's command. Each of them married a man from their own tribe, the tribe of Manasseh. They were happy because they had kept their family's land and honored both their father and the Lord.
Okay, I'm going to stop that right there because of time. There's just only a tiny bit more anyway. But realize that in these women, 5 women, sisters, came together because there was no brother in the family. And their families, everything was based on the boys, you know? And so when that happens, what's going on? What are you going to do? And so these women decided, they got together as sisters and they went, and is it okay to take a stand for our rights? Yes, it is.
Yes.
This is probably one of the first recordings of women's rights being recorded in scriptures. They had the right to take the stand, but they didn't say to protest. They didn't do, you know, anything like that. They didn't sign a petition. And they didn't get other women worked into a frenzy or anything like that. They just prepared their speech. They prepared their speech, and then they meekly stood in the tabernacle and gave out their proclamation, presented their case. And then, you know, that was agreed that, okay, they could. Then the question came up about, well, what if they marry outside the tribe? Then what happens? We lose the land. So then they came back and made the agreement that, okay, we will stay within our tribe when we marry, but we want to keep the name for our father's legacy and sake. And they allowed them to do it, and that remained a law then throughout forever for them. So it's okay to express our frustrations when we have them, but how we express them is key. And then the fact of that they came back and they were granted it, but with a stipulation. And sometimes we have to take a stipulation in something in order to get the larger picture covered and taken care of. But I just thought it was quite interesting that these 5 women they took their stand, brought it forth, and then accomplished it was a change in law that maintained forever, you know, and it was quite exceptional. But the way they did it was the key. They didn't get protests and didn't yell and scream and didn't make demands and declare. They just brought the situation and said, can we do something about this, because we don't have any brothers? So comments, questions on that one?
They were bold and brave and beautiful.
Bold and beautiful. There we go. Anything else, Cynthia? Jean?
I it's it's interesting that they were able to get laws changed because, of course, that's something women were never allowed to do. So that they were together enough to present it and to have other males to actually listen to them and change. Well, they went before God, and God was like, yeah, it's time for women to have some equal rights.
So they were in there for women's rights before we ever thought about
Yeah.
something called women's rights, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah. Anything else
A
there?
long time to spread all over, but they got it started.
Yeah, yeah. Exactly. And so it is a biblical concept.
Yeah.
You know,
There you go.
it really is, you know. And that's the
Yes.
thing I think we're learning from all these women is they were bold, they took a stand, they made their point, and then God honored them for this. Some of them he named them simply because he wanted us to know that's what they did and we should pay attention to. And then others he didn't name because he wanted us to pay attention to more to the concept than to who did it. You know? Yes, Janet.
Yes, and I just want to speak for both sides of it. The sisters for having the faith and Moses for asking God what to do. It's like, we need to all wait for the nudge from God. Like those women, those sisters, they waited for the nudge and kept their faith. And then Moses turned to God instead of people when the people would have said, no, we're not going to do this.
Yes, and I think that's a key point to realize here. It's both the sisters and then Moses went to God to get the solution.
Yes.
And the same with all of these women that we've looked at tonight. They all look to God for something. And they all maintain that. Rizpah and then Rebecca. And then all five of these women that we've made reference to here, it's just amazing. If we look in the scriptures, we see Jesus everywhere, even before he was born. We see Jesus is there. It's Jesus all the way through, all the way through. Oh, I've enjoyed again studying these and got some more things for you next week. And then
yeah, this is amazing.
I've just really enjoyed studying them. You could do a year's study on these and not get to all the women. Well, simply because remember we said there's 180 women mentioned all the way, and then 77 to 80 of them don't even have a name. They're just mentioned. But they're there for a purpose, and we can learn from all of them if we get in and dig it out, search it out. So, let me see if I can stop the recording. Any comments, anything left from anybody? Are we good in all of those?
Yeah, thank
Yeah, I
you,
am. Thank
Sharon.
you.